as I was saying to Elizabeth before we went on the air, I've been reading the book, and I'm about a third of the way through it, and the person is in the trunk of the car who is annoying to someone who wants to leave the New Jersey insurance industry and go into the entertainment industry. But I don't want to know how it ends, but it looks like that woman's existence in the trunk is getting very precarious.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I think the fact that she's in the trunk, I mean, it is sort of what he's doing, this character who's in the insurance business, who's always dreamed of becoming a screenwriter, he's actually reenacting scenes from his script. And the producer in the car, in the trunk of the car, turned down the script because it was cliched, everyone,
right.
I mean, he put a trunk, everyone uses a trunk.
After it had been approved, though, by someone else.
Somebody else. So that goes back to what I said before. You just have to find that one person who loves your work. That's just sort of an aside. But anyway, so this character, Hugh, he was so excited that he had sold the script and it was going to be made into a film, and the man who had bought it dies suddenly. And this woman comes in and takes over the project and decides that this isn't something she wants to be involved in. First of all, it's very violent, and so I sort of wanted to look at how we have become so desensitized to violence in the media, and we are always bombarded with this visual kind of negative stimulation. The 6 o'clock news, for example. I mean, how many times do you see car crashes?
Right.
Things burning, plane crashes. We have all these problems in our society, and so I think that we're somewhat desensitized to it, and so I wanted to really evaluate that in the novel.
I'll tell you something as an aside. WINS Radio in New York, the old news station down there, pulled away from those stories, and the ratings went.
Isn't that interesting?
So they had to go back to those type of stories, but there was also a feeling that in getting away from the fires and the murders and the crime on the streets, they were getting away from the core of what the city is all about, the rhythm of the city, and that was one of the reasons. But when you write
that's fascinating. When
you write a book, and this is, I believe you said your third mystery novel, do you suddenly, like you're one day at the beach or something and say, wow, you might see a boat sail by and gee, I'd like to write a mystery about a captain of a ship. Is that how it comes to be? Or
I think the best way I can describe sort of how I get inspired to write a story is I like to ask the question, what if? It's very simple. What if this person here with this sort of life and these, this family and this job, what if this person comes into that person's life and upsets the balance? I think that's very interesting. I mean, what if you walked out of your house one morning and there was somebody standing there? What would you do? So you'd have to sort of...
That happens once in a while.
You'd have to handle the situation. I mean, that's just a simple...
You mean a stranger?
A stranger.
Okay.
So that goes back to the title of the book, A Stranger Like You. I think, we are all strangers to some degree. We know each other on many different levels, but we all remain strangers to one another, fundamentally.
But what makes you pick a particular... I'll go back to the sitting on the beach and seeing a boat. Yeah. What triggers you to say...
Well, it's funny that you mention that, because I'm writing something new right now, and there's this character who sails. It's like I love looking at life and looking at people and thinking about the interesting things, all of the myriad interesting things that people do: sailing, tennis, people who build boats, people who go rock climbing, a variety of things that I might not necessarily do, although I do love to sail. But so it's kind of an exciting way for me to experience those things as a writer, because I research them. I do an awful lot of research. In this particular novel, for example, there's a character who comes in later who's a vet he's just returned from Iraq, And, I haven't been to Iraq, and I haven't fought in the war, but I have to try to research enough to imagine and make it real on the page. So that's very important to me, to really do a lot of research so I can create that authenticity.
What was the topic of your first mystery?
The first novel is called The Doctor's Wife, and it's
the medical field.
It's about the medical field.
Okay, what's the topic of the second?
The second was about adoption, really, and identity, the search for identity.
Okay, and this one is about film. So to a degree, these three sort of have something that you at least have been peripherally involved in your life.
Absolutely.
So it's a comfort zone there.
Absolutely, and not necessarily, I'm comfortable talking about those three things, but I feel like I have kind of the inside scoop on those three subjects. Being married to a doctor, which I am.
Right.
And being able to write about that dynamic in a marriage, which I think was fascinating for me. It was also very cathartic. I could complain a little bit. But it's ultimately a very powerful relationship. The second book, I'm adopted. I'm a happily adopted person. So I wanted to write about
You are
that.
adopted?
I am adopted,
okay.
Yes. And I really wanted to address all of the feelings and elements that kind of come along with that in those relationships. And so that's what I did in Somebody Else's Daughter. And this book, I trained as a screenwriter. I lived in Los Angeles, and I had all these good memories that I wanted to draw upon for this book.
Now, kids that are in grammar school, high school, or college that might want to pursue journalism, I told you before, going on the air, I did a radio interview with Jeanette Jordan, who is the society columnist for the Saratoga newspaper, which used to be Gannett, and her works have been published all over the nation, especially during the Saratoga racing season.
Cool.
And I asked her recommendations to someone getting in to this business, and I'm going to ask yours now. What would you recommend?
I would. The first thing I would recommend to anyone who really wants to write fiction is to read as much.
Just
fiction.
write.
Okay, to write.
Because
okay,
I'm talking about it possibly could be newspapers, magazines.
Sure. I guess. Well, the first step would be to read as much as possible. To read the newspaper, to figure out what the structure of a newspaper article would be. To read fiction, to read the great novels, to figure out how to create a character on your own, and then to really study with people, to take courses as much as possible.
What sort of courses?
I would definitely start with an expository writing class, so you can understand the components of writing a decent essay. And that sounds boring to most people, but it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. It depends what you're writing about. It should be. You should try to find a subject that is as interesting to you as possible. That's the best place to start. Because if you're writing about something that's boring to you, then it's going to be a boring piece. And then I think I would really suggest working with a mentor, somebody who's a teacher, a high school teacher, who can really kind of inspire you to continue to learn more.
Those are great. What else would you suggest?
I think that's it. Write as much as possible. Write your feelings about things. Keep a journal. Be a good observer. If you're on a bus or a train, just sharpen your ears so that you're hearing everything that's going on around you, because you're going to try to write about it and capture that setting as accurately as possible.
Well, everything you said, she said what she said, a couple of other things, but then again, you're coming from the vantage point of an author of a book. She said, learn how to spell. And she said that about 7 times.
Right.
Learn how to spell. She also said to read the newspaper and magazines all the time.
Yes.
And also to watch television news so that you know what's going on in your environment as well. Those are basically, but again, she is more of a news background.
Sure. No, but even for a fiction writer, somebody who wants to write stories, they have to have a sense of what's going on, what the world is all about, and create a certain kind of context in which to put a story into.